joining us.
Want to mute, Prof?
Huh? Sorry? Oh, I have to unmute. Okay. I have to mute. Okay. It's muted. That was okay.
Sorry, was the voice going through just now? Okay. Al-Fatiha.
Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Okay.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, today we're going to be hearing a talk by Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan. We will put his CV online because Professor Kamal always tells me never to have long introductions on him in any session that I've moderated. But maybe suffice to just mention that Prof. Kamal, if you don't know, was our third rector of the International Islamic University, Malaysia. He's currently the chairman of the Institute of Islamic Understanding in Malaysia, and still very, very much, active with the IIUM, giving his fortnightly lectures on Imam Al-Ghazali previously and on Said Qutb fi Zilal Quran, which comes almost every 2 weeks. Prof. Kamal himself has written a book in 2011, The Voices of Islamic Moderation, from this part of the world in Southeast Asia. And I believe in that book, he has a section in which he's talking about Wasatiyyah himself. As we all know, Prof. Kamal also recently has written a book, a very different type of book this time, entitled Corruption and Hypocrisy in Malay Politics, which has turned out to be a very big book in Malaysia at this time, and we wish him well in his endeavor. So with that brief introduction, how we're going to do this, Prof, is we'll give you about 35 to 40 minutes to maybe make your presentation, and then we will open Q&A. If the voice thing doesn't work by then, we will have the questions on chat, and then we can try to have you answer these questions this way. So with that, I have the pleasure to invite Professor Kamal to make his presentation on Al-Marhum Shaykh Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradhawi, his contributions to the Wasatiyyah Discourse. Prof. Kamal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Can you hear me, Prof. Aslam? Good. I think I think the problem is solved now. My daughter-in-law came and did the magic, and so now it's okay. So I need a magician always by my
So,
side.
Prof, you are able to hear. You're able to hear me now.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, wonderful.
Alhamdulillah. I'm very, very sorry for that technical problem I faced just now. I did not expect that to happen, and I just don't know how to solve it. I'm going to read from my paper, and it may take more than 40 minutes. Hope you don't mind.
Problem, Prof. It's your session.
Yeah, and also this is my favorite Shaykh. I am most honored to be invited by the International Institute of Islamic Thought of East and Southeast Asia to speak in this November intellectual discourse in memory of our beloved Al-Allama, Shaykh Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradhawi, rahimahullah, who returned to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on 26 September 2022. My first encounter with the most esteemed Shaykh was in 1992 when he visited IIUM in its Petaling Jaya temporary campus. I remember asking His Eminence a question related to the Iranian Revolution of 1979, namely how we as Sunni Muslims, and I was one of them, can justify our support of the revolution. He explained that we have to distinguish between Shi'ism and the revolution. The revolution deserved our support because it was a justifiable and legitimate people's revolt against a tyrannical, cruel, and oppressive dictatorship of the Shah, the Shahanshah, the King of Kings, who was well known for his un-Islamic attitudes, and he was, of course, his regime was strongly supported by the United States of America as well as Israel. In doing so, we are not endorsing the Shi'i school of thought, although the revolution was led by Shi'i religious leaders, Ayatollahs and Hujjatul Islams, and justified on Shi'i grounds, because there are serious theological differences between the two schools of thought. I was satisfied with his answer because in my support of the revolution and my visit to Iran in 1981, I made that same distinction and made it clear to my students, including at that time Aslam Haneef in the first year in IIUM, that I was not endorsing, let alone embracing Shi'ism in my enthusiastic support for the revolution. However, the Shaykh continued to maintain good rapport with Shi'i religious leaders for a long time in the spirit of Muslim unity and also in wanting to direct all Muslim forces towards the liberation of Palestine. But when it dawned upon him later that Shi'i religious leaders were involved in the Shiitization of Egypt, and in fact spreading Shi'ism and invading Sunni societies in traditionally strong Sunni countries or regions, including in Sunni Southeast Asian countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, he changed his tolerant stance to one of objection, dismay, and later hostility. I must confess that I learned a lot about Islam from the books of the Shaykh and regard myself as one of his anonymous murids around the world. I have been indeed enlightened by many of his scholarly views regarding Islam in the modern world, and I'm grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for exposing me to the works of the Shaykh. I also benefited from following the television program he was best known for, namely Al-Sharia wal-Haya on Al Jazeera channel, which had an estimated audience of 40 to 60 million worldwide. In the opinion of Dr. Yasir Qadhi, the Shaykh, I'm quoting from Dr. Yasir Qadhi, the Shaykh is the most iconic scholar of not just our era, but frankly, of our century. And if he is not the Mujaddid of our era, he is definitely one of the mujaddids of our era. This is from Yusuf al-Qaradhawi on the 30th of September, when he spoke on the life, legacy, and thought of Shaykh Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradhawi. As a brilliant and top student of Al-Azhar throughout his undergraduate years, he was in his early years influenced by the works of Al-Imam al-Ghazali as well as that of Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim. Later in life, with his involvement in Islamic movement and the Islamic Brotherhood, he came under the influence of Shaykh Hassan al-Banna, Shaykh Rashid Rida, Shaykh Dr. Muhammad al-Ghazali, Sayyid Sabiq, Abu al-Ala Maududi, and Shaykh Abu al-Hassan Ali al-Nadawi. In the field of Islamic jurisprudence, he was very much influenced by Imam al-Shatibi in propagating the concept of maqasid al-Sharia through his study of the al-Muwafaqat. As a result of severe repression by Egyptian military dictatorship and imprisonment of thousands of Islamic religious scholars, the Shaykh decided in 1961 to live in self-exile in Qatar, where he benefited immensely from the generous hospitality of the Qatari Emir, Shaykh Ahmed bin Ali al-Thani. He, and I'm quoting here, he emerged as the most vocal, globally recognized Muslim scholar supporting the 2011 popular uprisings, the so-called Arab Spring, against the despotic governments of the Middle East. And this is from aljazeera.com. In Qatar, he founded the Islamic Studies Department of the University of Qatar and later was appointed as the Dean of the Sharia College of Qatar. In 2008, the Hamad bin Khalifa University established in his honor the Markaz al-Qaradhawi lil-Wasatiyyah al-Islamiyya wa Tajdeed to devote to the promotion of Wasatiyyah thought and research. It aims at the establishment of a society built upon the principle of Wasatiyyah and engaging contemporary issues such as democracy, economics, human rights, role of women and family, environmental problems, the challenges of war and peace, violence, terrorism, backwardness, and corruption. In addition to his radio talk show, the television program sponsored by Al Jazeera made Shaykh al-Qaradhawi the first global mufti. His books and printed works number around 120. Dr. Tariq As-Suwailam said that the number of his books spanning all the genres of Islamic religious studies was around 170. Dr. Yasir Qadi mentioned that his unpublished articles and pamphlets number more than 200. I understand that currently efforts are afoot to publish in November 2022 a huge encyclopedia on Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradhawi consisting of 105 volumes. One can say that throughout his life, he always tried to avoid going to extremes, to find the middle ground or the balance, the tawazun. He speaks a lot about a tawazun, a tawassut, the balance between two extremes or two opposing things, between tradition and modernity, between spirituality and materiality, between individualism and collectivism, between soul and body, and between excess and deficiency. From his study of the Quran and the Sunnah, and from the works of earlier scholars, it became clear to Shaykh al-Qaradhawi that the religion of Islam offered to mankind the divinely prescribed method, here the word method comes very often, manhaj, of being in the middle or the middle path as the Islamic way of life, away from the world-denying idealism of Christian gospels or the worldliness orientation, together with the hereafter forgetting teachings of the Old Testament and the legalism of rabbinic Judaism. His study of Allah's appointment of the Islamic community as the Ummatan Wasata, in other words, his study of this verse, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا in إلى آخر الآية in Surah Al-Baqarah 143. That is the Islamic community was made ummatan wasata by Allah in order to become the witnesses, the shuhada to all mankind, led him to conclude that al-Wasatiyyah is the essential nature of Islam itself. Since then, he has been in the forefront of what he called the Tayyar al-Wasatiyyah, the Wasati trend, Wasatiyyah trend in contemporary Islamic thought, or the Manhaj Wasati, or Wasati approach, to such an extent that he has been regarded as the leader of the Wasatiyyah school of thought, or Madrasa al-Wasatiyyah, to the end of his life. Several of his books have addressed the meaning, importance, manifestations, and implications of al-Wasatiyyah. Among them, As-Sahwatul Islamiyya Bain al-Juhud wa Tatarruf, As-Sahwatul Islamiyya wa Humum al-Watan al-Arabi wal-Islami, Awlawiyat al-Haraka al-Harakat al-Islamiyya في المرحلة القادمة, الصحوة الإسلامية من المراهقة إلى الرشد, ختابنا الإسلامي في عصر العولمة, كلمة في الوسطية الإسلامية ومعالمها, and فقه الوسطية والتجديد, معالم ومنارات, which is his most important work. And I am going to refer to this work in my presentation which is coming. It is interesting to note that Al-Shahid Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah had preceded Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradhawi in describing the manifestations of al-Wasatiyyah in Islam in his commentary Fi Zilal al-Quran. It is possible that the Shaykh was also influenced by the way al-Wasatiyyah was perceived as a comprehensive worldview by Sayyid Qutb. Inshallah, towards the end, I will look very closely at the descriptions given by Sayyid Qutb on the Ummatan Wasata, because I think it is a very, very important description at that time, which was, I think, in the early 60s. Right now. In his book on the fiqh al-wasatiyyah, he deals first with the definition of al-wasatiyyah from the linguistic point of view, and then from also the Sharia point of view. So or the al-mafhum al-shar'i or al-islami. He says that in his book Al-Khasa'is al-Ammah lil-Islam, general characteristics of Islam, he considers al-Wasatiyyah as, he says, min abraz khasa'is al-Islam. That is the most prominent characteristic of Islam. And he says, wa yu'abbiru anha aydan bit-tawazun. Is also, understood as at-tawazun, balance, balance, or awil i'tidal, moderation. And he says this means at-tawassut, also this balance. Okay, now he says that this balance, example of this balance he has given here, for instance, balance between al-Rabbaniyya wal-Insaniyya, balance between al-Ruhiyya wal-Madiyya, balance between al-Ukhrawiyya wal-Dunyawiyya, balance between al-Wahy wal-Aqal, balance between al-Madawiyya wal-Mustaqbaliyya, balance between al-Fardiyya wal-Jama'iyya, balance between al-Waqi'iyya wal-Mithaliyya, and then the balance between al-Huquq wal-Wajibat, and then balance between al-Thabat wal-Taghayyur, and then balance between al-Nas wal-Ijtihad, and balance between al-Zahiriyya wal-Maqasidiyya, and so on and so forth. So, and he has given in his some earlier works the 20 types of balances which I have used in my book. By the way, it was called the Voice of Islam, Voice of Islamic Moderation in the Malay world, not in Southeast Asia. ومعنى التوسط أو التوازن. Okay, and then he talks about that this التوازن, this balance, is actually a phenomenon in the cosmos. Allah has created the whole universe in balance. He talks about al-mizan and all that, and so Allah, it seems that Allah wants the Muslim ummah to have this special characteristic of wasatiyyah, just as the cosmos has that characteristic of wasatiyyah. He goes on to then explain what he calls the indications of wasatiyyah of other meanings, and this is very important. He recognized, he says, number one, these are some of the meanings of wasatiyyah other than tawazun. Yeah, most of his writings stress on tawazun, but he says several meanings of wasatiyyah is, number one, he says al-wasatiyyah ta'ni al-adl. Wasatiyyah means justice. And then he says al-adl alladhi huwa darura liqabul shahadat al-shahid. فما لم يكن عدلا فإن شهادته مرفوضة مردودة. So this justice is necessary for the acceptance of a shahada, of the testimony of the Muslim ummah. And if the one who is giving the testimony does not have justice, then the shahada is rejected. Yeah. So and then this is very important because this source وتفسير الوسط في الآية بالعدل ثابت عند النبي فقد روي الإمام أحمد والبخاري عن أبي سعيد الخضري أن النبي فسر الوسط هنا بالعدل، والعدل والتوسط والتوازن عبارات متقاربة المعنى، فالعدل من الحقيقة توسط بين الطرفين المتنازعين أو الأطراف المتنازعة بدون ميل أو تحيز إلى أحدهما أو أحدها، وهو بعبارة أخرى موازنة بين هذه الأطراف بحيث يعطى كل منها حقه دون بخس ولا جور عليه. So the interpretation of wasat in the ayah as adl is confirmed, is from the Prophet ﷺ, because it is related by Imam Ahmad and Al-Bukhari on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudari that the Prophet interpreted wasat as adl, not tawazun. But of course, tawazun is also part of it. Yeah, but the word given by the Prophet was adl. And so he says that adl, tawassut, tawazun are actually having the closely related meanings. Yeah, they are not really mutually exclusive. Yeah. Okay, then also he says that al-wasatiyah also means al-istiqamah or istiqamat. So he speaks of istiqamatul manhaj, that you have the method of the straight road, and the ummah of Islam is the ummah of the straight path, ummah of as-sirat al-mustaqim. And he says that the Muslims are taught to ask Allah for guidance to the straight path 17 times a day. And then he says that in the tafsir there is the opinion that the Jewish people represented al-ifrat, that is excessiveness, while the Christian represented at-tafrit, that is laxity. But Islam teaches the Muslims to avoid the extremism of the two opposing groups. Yeah, the ifrat of the Jewish people and the tafrit of the Christians. Then he gave a long quotation from Ibn Taymiyyah, from Ibn Taymiyyah's book Al-Jawab al-Sahih liman baddala din al-Masih. Another meaning of wasatiyyah, he says, is khairiyah, or goodness and benevolence in material affairs as well as in moral affairs. And here he quoted Ibn Kathir as saying that the ummah wasat, ummah wasat, according to Ibn Kathir, means al-khiyar wal-ajwad. The khiyar here means chosen for goodness and excellence. Yeah. So this ummah is chosen for goodness and excellence. Here you find that this khairiyah, what do you call it, also embraces the concept of kuntum khairu ummatin ukhrijat linnas. So khairiyah is in fact a part, cannot be removed from wasatiyyah. And Allah has made this, it is Allah who has made this ummah and produced it as the best ummah, khairu ummah, for the benefit of all human beings, by giving them guidance, benefits, reform, and also happiness. And then another meaning, another implication is of wasatiyyah is al-aman. Wasatiyyah represents security, true security, and also as dalil of quwwah, evidence of power. It is also, he says, the center of unity. That is as it is the point of balance or tawazun and i'tidal. So he says, for all the above reasons, yeah, from the definitions given by the linguists, the jurists, and then from the tafsir of the Quran and from the Sunnah, he says, I have endeavored to highlight wasatiyyah as one of the general characteristics of Islam. Now, on the manifestation of al-wasatiyyah in Islam, or mazahir al-wasatiyyah fil Islam, Shaykh Qaradhawi discusses 4 such manifestations. The first manifestation is what he calls wasatiyyatul Islam in the i'tiqad, in the creed, or the articles of faith. So Islam is distinguished from materialism, atheism, naturalism, pantheism, humanism, worship of human beings, etc., including rationalism. But Islam believes in the integration or the balance between aqal and wahi, balance between dunya and akhirah, balance between body and soul, and so on. And number 2, wasatiyyatul Islam in ibadah and sha'air. That is the wasatiyyah of Islam, the balance of Islam in ibadah, in worship and rituals. And he compared it with Buddhism. Then the third is wasatiyyatul Islam in al-akhlaq, the balance between extreme idealism and realism is the essence of Islamic akhlaq. And he says that human beings are complex creatures with intelligence and also desire. So there is in human beings the ghariza, the instinct of al-hayawan, gharizatul hayawan, and also the ruhaniyatul al-malak, that is the spirituality of the angels. However, it is his heart, his qalb, which is at the center of his personality, and his moral conduct is grounded in how his qalb is nurtured with tazkiyah and other forms of purification. His moral behavior or his akhlaq, the akhlaq of the Muslim, is therefore a reflection of the state of tazkiyah. And the Muslim worldview is that dunya and its life is a preparation for the eternal life. Then the fourth manifestation says Wasatiyyah Islam fi tashri', in legislation and legal and social systems. So in the legislation, he sees this balance in tahleel and tahrim, balance in making things halal and making things haram. Then there is a balance in family affairs, for instance, between polygamy and celibacy. Balance in peace and war. There is a place for both war and peace, not just one of them. And fourth is balance between liberalism or capitalism and between Marxism or socialism, and then balance or tawazun between individualism and collectivism. He refers to al-madhab al-jama'i versus al-madhab al-fardi. And these forms of balances, this tawazun, has also been described by Said Qutb in several of his works. Now, the source of this balance is, of course, the Quran. And he gives many verses from the Quran. Of course, I can mention just two here. وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارَ الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, and many others, which all emphasize balance and moderation, tawazun and i'tidal. And Islam is, of course, against the rahbaniyah, the monasticism that was invented in Christianity. Now, it's interesting, he says, in his study of the Sunnah, the word wasat doesn't seem to be there, but its alternative is found in the Sunnah. He says the alternative word for wasat in the Sunnah is al-qasdu, meaning also at-tawassut and i'tidal. So balance and also moderation. Then he describes the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, who were all, in fact, calling for this wasatiyyah approach. As the ulama also, generally speaking, have been in favor of wasatiyyah. And he mentions, for instance, Ibn Qutaybah in his Tafsir Gharib of the Quran. He says, Ummatan wasata. Ibn Qutaybah means adulan khiyaran. Adul is the plural of adil, that is to say the ummah of just people, khiyaran, the ummah of choice for goodness. And then At-Tabari mentions that the ummah are not extremists like the Christians. The ummah is not supposed to have the element of extremism of the Christians or the negligence of the Jews. But they are, according to At-Tabari, Ahlut Tawassut. Ahlut Tawassut wal i'tidal fihi. So the ummah is people of tawassut, again, balance and moderation inside it. Al-Fakhr al-Razi, as usual, gives very long descriptions, and he says that scholars differed in interpretation of al-wasat, and he gives four types of interpretations. The first one, he says, is that in al-wasat huwa al-adl We heard that already. The wasat means justice. And the al-qawl al-thani, inna al-wasat min kulli shay'in khiyaruhu. So wasat means khiyar. Then the al-qawl al-thalith refers to aktharu fadlan, something that is virtuous, most virtuous. And then al-qawl al-rabi', it says متوسطون في الدين بين المفرط والمفرط. So again, it is a balance in religion between the one who is lax in his views and the one who is very strict in his views. Al-Qurtubi says al-wasat is al-adl. Again, we hear that based on the hadith, famous hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudari. So he says ummatan wasata means ummatan adlan, the ummah of justice. Then Al-Qaradhawi refers to the views of many scholars of the maqasidi maqasidi with al-wasatiyyah. So the maqasid scholars are actually also highlighting the importance of wasatiyyah, because to them al-wasatiyyah is one of the most important maqasid of Islamic Sharia. Yeah, that's also very important to note. And the scholars mentioned by Shaykh Qaradhawi include Al-Mawardi, Al-Juwayni, Al-Raghib Al-Isfahani, Al-Ghazali, Ibn Aqil, Ibn Qudama, Izzuddin Abdul Salam, Ibn Al-Qayyim, and he quotes extensively from Al-Ghazali, Ibn Al-Jawzi, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Al-Shatibi. So all of them are in fact saying that Islam provides balance in many things, not ghulu of the Christians or a deficiency of the Jews. Shaykh al-Qaradhawi also addresses some of the wrong conceptions of al-wasatiyyah. He said that among the literalists and scholars of Islam, there is this rejection of the manhaj al-wasatiyyah. Yeah, because they are saying, and he quotes, there is nothing called al-wasatiyyah. They all go by a dalil. Dalil al-shara. If there is dalil, you follow. If there's no dalil, you don't follow. There's no such thing as, he completely disagrees with this view. He says they do not understand what we mean by al-wasatiyyah. We do not disagree with dalil shar'i, he says, ever. In fact, we take the dalil from verses of the Quran first, verses of the Quran, then hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then ijma' of the ulama, and then maqasid al-sharia, and all the authoritative imams are in favor of this al-ittijah al-wasat, the orientation of al-wasat, alladhi yarfudu al-ghulu wal-tafrit wal-tughyan wal-ikhsar. So this ittijah wasat, this orientation wasat, rejects ghulu, this extremism, and also tafrit, and tughyan, or excess, wal-ikhsar, or deficiency. And he has given quotations from Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, Al-Shatibi. From the modern scholars, he refers a lot to Shaykh Rashid Rida, Mahmoud Shaltut, Shaykh Mohammed Al-Madani, who has a book called Wasatiyyah Islam. Shaykh Muhammad Abdullah Darraz, Shaykh Muhammad Al-Khidr Hussein, Al-Imam Al-Shahid Hassan Al-Banna, Shaykh Abdul Majid bin Badis, Shaykh Tahir ibn Ashur, Shaykh Jamaluddin Al-Qasimi, Shaykh Mustafa al-Zarqa and Shaykh Mustafa al-Sibai, and of course his teacher Shaykh Mohammed al-Ghazali, plus also Sayyid Qutb. So he quotes extensively from all these scholars. There is another type of wrong conception of those who disagreed with manhaj wasati. That is, they are of the view that wasatiyah actually means at-tasahul. Wasatiyah means indulgence, which is different from at-taysir. He has been talking about taysir, not tasahul. But those people think that he's actually making tasahul, being indulgent in their views of religion. So he says this manhaj at-taysir that he has been following is provided by the Sharia. For instance, in salat, in war, in sickness, there are many aspects of taysir, making things easy for the Muslims in having problems, either in war or in sickness or in traveling and so on. And he quotes from the Prophet ﷺ, who said, "Yassiru wa la tu'assiru, bashiru wa la tunaffiru." And he also quotes the view, the Prophet's prophetic view, that Allah loves that his rukhas, that his Allah's concessions be performed, just as he loves that his azaim be followed. So that's very important. And so the Shaykh is just saying that there are rukhas provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the view that wasatiyah means tasahul is completely wrong. He also quoted the view of Sayyidatina Aisha, who said, whenever the Prophet had to choose between two things, he would choose the easier of the two, as long as it is not sinful. And therefore, it is apparent that Islam prefers that heavy responsibilities be minimized, in line with the principle of Yusrul Islam, the ease of Islam, not the Usrul Islam. And this has been pointed out by Allama Rashid Rida. Hence, the well-known legal maxims, the Qawa'id Shar'iyya, such as Ad-Darura Tubihul Mahdurat, that is to say, necessity makes that which is prohibited lawful, and Al-Mashaqqa Tajlib At-Taysir, that is to say, hardship brings forth ease, and then also the principle of Akhafu Dararain, choosing the lesser of two evils, and then La Darar wa La Dirar, no injury, no harm shall be afflicted or reciprocated, and so on. Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradhawi explains that al-wasatiyah does not nullify strictness, at-tashdid, in some situations. So there is a place for tashdid, and there is a place for taysir. So it requires us, it says, to put leniency or gentleness, a lean, in its place, and striction, a strictness or a shiddah in its place. So there is a place for shiddah, there is place for a lean in Islamic Sharia. He also says it is a wrong perception to think that wasatiyah is in fact giving concession to the lowest level, instead of aiming for the highest level. And so he says this is against the commands of the Quran. So the Quran is asking people to do things ahsanu amala, so to the best of their ability. And of course, there are hadith also on itqan. Then given the highly significant concept of wasatiyah, Yusuf al-Qaradhawi discusses in his book Fiqh al-Wasatiyyah the ways of orienting the ummah to wasatiyah. How to orient the ummah to wasatiyah. And he gives three areas that need attention. Number one is da'wah wal irshad. Yeah. Number one is ad-da'wah wal irshad. And in da'wah wal irshad, he speaks of the necessity of balancing between bain al-aql wal naql. The necessity of balancing bain al-mithaliyya wal waqa'iyya. The necessity of balancing between al-raja wal khawf. And then the necessity of balancing between al-firaq al-islamiyya al-mukhtalifa. There are so many Islamic groups and so on. So we have to know how to balance. And then interesting balance between as-salafiyya was-sufiyya. In fact, he says, we talk about nusallifu as-sufiyya wa nusawwifu al-salafiyya. So we make Sufism Salafi and we make Salafism Sufi. Okay. I do not know which group Prof. Aslam belongs to. Then he also speaks about our mawqif, our position vis-a-vis Western civilization. Again, here he is using wasatiyyah, balance. You have one group, as described by Abul Hassan Ali al-Nadawi, the rejectionists, reject everything from the West. And then the other group is accept everything from the West, good, bad, and evil, everything, just accept. Like some of those modernists in Egypt. So he says, again, Islam wants us to adopt the middle position between rejection and complete adoption. And he says, there are several good things from Western civilization. So he pointed out, for instance, two things which are, or three, I think. One is scientific prowess, science and technology, the advancement in science and technology. Number two is good governance, what he calls husnul idara wa tanzim li shu'uni al-hayah. And number three, so here is his modern concern for human freedom and human rights. Of course, he's very concerned about women's rights. Okay, so then he says towards the end of this book, before he moves on to the second part, which is on tajdeed. But I'm not going to touch at tajdeed, because that's a separate topic. So he says, Inna manhaj al-wasatiyyah al-islamiyya huwa hablun najah. So this is the rope that will take us to najah, that is to say, our salvation. Wa safinatul inqadh al-yawm. And there's also the ship that will deliver us today, our ummah today, لأمتنا العربية والإسلامية من التيه والضياع. That is, this is the ship that is going to deliver our ummah, the Arab ummah and the Islamic ummah, from going astray and also from ruin, bal al-halak wad-damar. In fact, it's annihilation and destruction. الذي يهدد حاضرنا ومستقبلنا ويهدد البشرية من ورائها التي تأمل فيها خيرا. So this is the thing that is going to help us, and also to help our present and our future, which is being threatened, humanity also being threatened, and humanity is hoping for goodness from this wasatiyyah, manhaj al-wasatiyyah. Now, in an earlier and shorter book, which is about 65 pages, كلمة في الوسطية الإسلامية ومعالمها, the Shaykh الفهم الشمول للإسلام, comprehensive understanding of Islam. Number 2, مرجعية القرآن والسنة, faith in the authority of the Quran and the Sunnah. Number 3, ترسيخ المعاني والقيم الربانية, firm establishment of divine concepts and values. Number 4, وضع التكاليف في مراتبها الشرعية, putting the responsibilities in accordance with the legal status. And number 5, التركيز على القيم الأخلاقية, concentration on moral values. And number 6, التجديد والاجتهاد في أصله ومحله, renewal and ijtihad from its proper source to its proper place. Then number 7, الموازنة بين الثوابت والمتغيرات, balance between the immutable and the changeable. And number 8, تبني منهج التيسير في الفتوى, adoption of the method of facilitation in the making of fatwa. And number 9, تبني منهج التبشير في الدعوة, adoption of the method of giving good tidings in Islamic propagation. Number 10, تدرج الحاكم, adoption of the method of wise gradualism. And then number 11, السلام والجهاد, giving proper place to peace and jihad in the proper context. Number 12, المرج بين المتقابلات, blending of opposites. And number 13, فريضة تحرير الأرض الإسلامية, the duty of liberating Islamic lands. And 14, حقوق الأقلية الدينية, observing the rights of religious minorities. And then number 15, احترام العقل والتفكير, honoring human reason and thinking. Number 16, القيم الإنسانية والاجتماعية, observing humanistic and social values. Number 17, إنصاف المرأة وتكريمها, being fair to women and honoring them. Number 18, العناية بالأسرة وتوسيعها, caring for the family and extending it. Number 19, حق الشعوب في اختيار حكامها, the right of peoples to choose their rulers. And number 20, تقوية اقتصاد الأمة وبناؤه على فقه الشريعة, strengthening the economy of the ummah and constructing it in accordance with the rulings of the Sharia. Prof. Aslam is coming up with his manhaj wasati, manhaj al-iqtisad al-wasati, which is something new, alhamdulillah, a new product from IIUM. And then number 21, al-Ummah al-Islamiyya wa wahdatuha wal-wala' laha, working for the Islamic Ummah and its unity and giving allegiance to it. And number 22, al-Iman bit-ta'addudiyya wa-tanawwu, belief in plurality and diversity. And 23, tajannub at-takfir wa-tasfiq wa-tafsiq, avoidance of the act of accusing others of infidelity and sinfulness. And 24, al-aqalliyat al-islamiyya fil alam, taking care of the plight of Muslim minorities in the world. Number 25, imaratul ard wa tahqiq at-tanmiyah wa himayatul bi'ah, cultivating the earth, actualizing proper development and protecting the environment. Number 26, darurat al-islah wa taghyir, the necessity of reform and change. And tajmi' kulli huwa al-ummah wa harakatiha, bringing together all the positive forces and movements in the ummah for the strengthening and unity of the ummah. And 28, ad-da'wah ila fiqh jadid, calling for a new fiqh. And 29, munjazat ummatina al-hadariyya, celebrating and extolling our ummah's civilizational achievements. And number 30, the last one, al-intifa' bi khayri ma fi turathina, utilization of the good things in our legacy in all its diversity. The above 30 landmarks or principles have been modified and elaborated later, as explained by the Shaykh in his Adwa ala Ma'alim wa Manarat al-Wasatiyyah al-Mujaddada, that is to say, reflections on the landmarks and milestones of refurbished Wasatiyyah, which is given at the end of his book, Fiqh al-Wasatiyyah. And I have the translation here given by our colleague, Dr. Muhammad Habibur Rahman, those 30 principles, which is quite long, and if I were to read it, I will need another half an hour, and I don't think we want to go that way. So I will just skip this part, and I will let me now take you to the end of my presentation. There's no doubt that the about 30 landmarks in the implementation of Wasatiyyah are comprehensive and very important. Although the Shaykh did not mention anything about the Ummah's role of being shuhada ala nas, one can assume that those landmarks are also the qualities that the witnesses, the shuhada, have to have. Nevertheless, not many Muslim countries can be said to have such a comprehensive plan for the Ummah, although a few of those landmarks may be existing in some Muslim countries, some Islamic organizations, and in the lives of outstanding Muslim individuals. One of the reasons why such comprehensive plans or visions do not exist is because very few Muslim countries aspire to be a country or state based on Islamic principles and teachings. Another reason, to my mind, is that the concept of Ummah Wasat has been overshadowed for many decades by the concept of Khair Ummah. Now, we now know that Khair Ummah cannot be separated from Ummah Wasat. It is the Khairiyah of Ummah Wasat, is Khair Ummah. So, but in our religious discourse, we talk about, Khair Ummah, and then we forget about Ummah Wasat. Now we have to, don't forget Khair Ummah, regard Khair Ummah as part of Al-Wasatiyyah. Okay. So it is apparent that the Khair Ummah concept is an important part of the Ummah Wasat under its meaning of Khairiyah. It is subsumed under two of the meanings of Wasat. So Wasat, to my mind, has three major meanings. Yeah, one is Adl, justice. Second is Khairiyah, and third is Tawazun. So Khairiyah there, I would say, as being chosen by Allah for excellence. Yeah, and the other one is Tawazun. So balance, justice, and chosen for excellence. So when we talk about Wasatiyyah, we have to have all these three together. But unfortunately, in our ummatic discourse and khutbah and talks, we tend to focus on one. And we tend to focus, even Shaykh Qaradhawi has been focusing mainly on Tawazun, not so much on Adl, Khairiyah and Tawazun. Okay, but as I said, there is a place for Tawazun, but the Prophet ﷺ used the word Adl. So we want to give proper respect and authority to the prophetic wisdom, and not because our problem is now we don't have this balance. We don't know how to strike the balance. So we focus on Tawazun. But don't forget Adl, and Tawazun is part of Adl. So this is the most unfortunate, despite the fact that many translations of the English, of the Quran in English, Indonesian and Malay, do not translate wasat as moderate. Yeah. So even the word moderation, we have to use moderately, because for instance, in English translations, the word most used is justly balanced community. There is Abdullah Yusuf Ali and others from India. Or community in the middle way, of the middle way, there is Muhammad Asad. Or community of the golden mean, there is Abu Ala Maududi. Or a middle nation, there is Muhammad Pickthall. only one English translation uses moderate community, and that is from Thomas Irving, which is not a good translation. The most accurate translation is found in these English translations, which translate Ummah Wasat as a just nation. That is from Dr. Abdul Halim from London. Yeah, in his translation, you find that Ummah Wasat is translated as a just nation. And then also Sahih International also use a median community. In the Malay Indonesian translation, the one that uses the most accurate translation is that of Yusuf Zaki. Di bawah lindungan Ka'bah, terjemahan Fizil Al-Quran, which translates Ummah Wasat as Ummah Adil. Yusuf Zaki. He spent 11 years translating Fizil Al-Quran. And then Abdullah Basmeh in his tafsir Pimpinan Ar-Rahman translate this as satu umat yang pilihan dan adil. Pilihan dan adil. None of these translations talk of tawazun. Another uses the term umat pertengahan, middle community. From the above information, we can conclude that the vast majority of translations in English and Malay have not used the word moderate or sederhana in Malay. The words middle community, community of the middle way, community of golden mean, umat pertengahan in Indonesia tend to render the literal meaning of the term ummah wasat, while the terms umat adil dan pilihan and umat adil are the best renderings. Buya Hamka in his tafsir Azhar translate the term as suatu umat yang di tengah, suatu umat yang di tengah, which is a bit literal, yang di tengah, a community which is in the middle, which focuses only on the quality of being in the middle position between two extremes. Unfortunately, Buya Hamka does not say anything about the more fundamental quality of justice dalam umat wasat itu. In fact, many Muslim scholars generally defines al-wasatiyyah as a quality of at-tawazun and forget about the other two qualities of adl and what's the other one? Okay. It is my hope, I don't have the time now to go to very good definition by Sayyid Qutb in his Zilal al-Quran. I have to skip that. It is my hope that the popular understanding or misconception of wasatiyah as moderation or sederhana in Malay Indonesia will cease as soon as possible, and that any discourse on khair ummah should be connected with or be presented as an important aspect of ummatan wasata, because the former prescribes a general moral obligation of the Muslim community to enjoin that which is good and to forbid that which is evil, while the latter prescribes the global leadership role of the Muslim community once held by the Jews. This is emphasized by Maududi and also by Sayyid Qutb in the tafsir, that this is talking about leadership role taking from the hands of the Jews and the Christians and related to also the change of the Qibla. And it elevates the Ummah's position in the world as shuhada ala nas, as far as the implementation of justice, moral excellence, and balanced way of life are concerned. Okay, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower his blessings on the soul of our beloved teacher and eminent scholar for making us understand better many aspects of the teachings of Islam, including the enlightenment on the concept of wasatiyah, and equipping us with the proper Islamic positions vis-a-vis many problems of the contemporary world. I apologize for taking too much of your time, and I appreciate your patience. May Allah bless us all to help implement this responsibility of shahada, shuhada ala nas, with our attribute of the three attributes of ummatan wasata: justice, adl, khairiyah, and tawazun. وبالله التوفيق والهداية والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Prof. Kamal, for, as usual, a very comprehensive presentation. I think, the teacher in you is still there. I felt like taking notes. In fact, a lot of notes I was actually taking, listening to you. And I think you have rightly pointed out that Al-Marhum Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradhawi is the leading scholar that we all know about in this discourse on Wasatiyyah. The meaning of Wasatiyyah, as you mentioned, has been in a way we have abused the meaning to mean just middle or moderate, or sederhana, as you said in Malay, when actually it can also sometimes lead to mediocrity, and I think that's certainly not what is meant by this term wasatiyah. And you talked about the 20 balances that he has talked about, and I can imagine in this group there are many of your former students and maybe even now students of the university. These works and these principles would be wonderful theses in the making, to elaborate on the ideas of Shaykh Qaradhawi. You also talked about the manifestations of wasatiyah in faith, in worship, in akhlaq, in legislation. And I think, again, this is another very important lesson for us to learn, especially, I'm just wondering also, your book, Voices of Islamic Moderation from the Malay World. Unfortunately, all over the world, we are seeing more extreme positions. And I remember one book about we are meant to be da'i and not judges to give hukum, telling people you're going to hell, or
نحن دعاة لا قضاة.
Yes. And so this is really something that we all need to learn, from the great Shaykh. And I think your last point, khair ummah cannot be khair ummah if they don't have that feature of wasatiyah. But then, to make matters more complicated, you have to have the right meaning of wasatiyah, right? So this is a challenge to all of us. Okay, thank you very much. Just as a short note, apparently I had muted myself in the beginning, and we started by reciting Al-Fatiha for Shaykh Qaradhawi, and also for the sad news we learned today, the passing of our great Islamic economist, Mohammed Najatullah Siddiqui, who passed away. It could have been yesterday morning or this morning. A great contributor to Islamic economics, and will be very, very, very much missed. We have some questions, Prof, from Sabto. What is the consideration for wasatiyah between kindness or tenderness and to be strict when we happen to be in a position of a leader from non-Muslim majority community? So I'm assuming we're talking about where Muslims are a minority, right? Sabto is there, I can see him, but I'm assuming that's what he means, as an individual as well as community leader. So what do non-Muslims do in a Muslim majority nation?
Of course, they need to understand Islam, the teachings of Islam regarding wasatiyah, and because it's so important, because if they understand the meaning of wasatiyah, beginning with justice, then they will appreciate it, because Islamic justice is colorblind and is also does not give any position, any value to ethnicity or race. So that is proper understanding of Islam is needed. Now, for us Muslims who understand this wasatiyah, then they have to balance between gentleness and strictness, which is a form of a tawazun again, a wasat in the sense of. So, and you look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his example is one of tenderness, and and the kindness. For instance, the hadith speaks of a rifq, and the Prophet ﷺ is known by everybody as a man of great gentleness, a rifq. And he says that rifq is without rifq, then religion loses its beauty. But there is a place for strictness. So we have to let the non-Muslims know that when it comes to divine commandments, then we have to observe strictness. But even so, let's say talk of hudud. It's clear that hudud is of course prescribed by Allah. But in how many countries can we really implement hudud the way it ought to be in an ideal situation? Not many countries. Even in Southeast Asia, Brunei comes closest to implement the hudud. But no hands have been cut, and no rajam, because the requirements of the evidence are so difficult. So that's why scholars say the aim is not really to punish, but to bring about reform of the character. So so in a Muslim non-Muslim minority living in Muslim majority countries, it is our duty to bring about this Rahmaniyatul Islam and Insaniyatul Islam for our non-Muslims, co-citizens, to appreciate Islam better. So the problem is that the behavior of Muslims do not do justice to the teachings of Islam. And in politics today, you find that Muslims are divided into 10 Malays. Muslim Malays are divided into 10 political parties, when we need only 1 or 2. Anyway, so that's my first response.
Thank you, Prof. The next question from Sahid Hamid. Well, it's a long comment. Basically, if Shaykh Qaradhawi was influenced by Imam al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, would Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, al-Ghazali have been on the same manhaj if they were to be alive today?
Well, I think what Shaykh does is, even if they are going to be alive, those great Imams, Ibn Taymiyyah, Al-Ghazali, and Ibn Qayyim, they would be forced to, to integrate this this strictness and leniency and gentleness, so that's my feeling, that I think if the Shaykh were to be around, I mean, those great Imams were to be around, they would have the wisdom to understand that what we need in today's world is the kind face of Islam, wajah Islam yang damai is to be projected more than the sword.
Prof, a couple of participants have been asking, is there a paper that you're writing? Because they would like to maybe get access to this paper, if there is one, or if there's one coming.
Okay. Well, I have not put together a paper, but it is possible that, inshallah, with Allah's help, I will try to put all these things together in a paper, inshallah.
Okay, we look forward, Prof. Question from our regular Nuruddin from Indonesia. Does Qaradhawi also have special thoughts about secularization of knowledge and Islamization of knowledge? If it is said that according to Qaradhawi, science and technology are positive aspects of the West, does Qaradhawi feel that contemporary disciplines are neutral?
Okay, I think on this issue, I would say that Shaykh Qaradhawi does not really address his attention to Islamization, but secularization, of course, he has been very, very clear on secularization of life or of politics. But as far as science and technology are concerned, he seems to be of the view that the mainstream is sort of value-free. That's my feeling. I do not know, maybe because he has his children in the sciences. His daughters are, PhDs in physics and chemistry and biology and so on. So he sent his female children to learn science and technology. So I think there is a feeling that maybe because on epistemology, Shaykh Qaradhawi doesn't really look at other epistemologies. His epistemology is epistemology of the Quran. Look at his Kitab al-Ilm wal-Iman. Very good book, the harmony between ilm and iman, knowledge and he says Islam is ilm, is din al-ilm, and ilm is Islam. But has he written or looked at the contemporary sciences from an epistemological perspective? I have my doubts. So he doesn't talk about Islamization, although he respects the views of Sheikh Taha Jabir, Sheikh Dr. Abdul Hamid. These are his friends. He respects them very much, and they respect him a lot. But I guess because he is not from the but he has something I need to see later on, how he looks at the humanities and the social sciences. I think if he were to understand where is all this leading to, because I don't think he has really gone into postmodernism. If he understands that postmodernism means nihilism, then I'm sure he will be very much against postmodernism, as it has influenced many of the modern disciplines in the humanities and the social sciences. But I feel that there is this lack of attention to the negative side of science and technology.
Thank you, Prof. Usually we will go to the next one, but Nuruddin has another very interesting query. The views of Qaradhawi were also, in other words, to rebut the accusations against Islamic movements in the form of religious extremism tendencies. So, did Qaradhawi have any views about movements such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS?
Oh, well, I guess because I have not been following him on this, but I guess I think he's one of those few hundred ulama who were against 9/11 when it happened, and also he is one of those who were against the destruction of the Buddhist temple in Afghanistan, in Bahman. So it's very clear that he is very much against this at-tatarruf or tashaddud that he finds in Islam. So I am quite sure that he is very strongly against these so-called Islamic movements pretending to be representing Islam. So I do not have the books, but I am sure if we look at his fiqhul jihad, I think he has addressed the issue of extremism and of these groups in his fiqhul jihad, his 3-volume monumental work on fiqhul jihad.
Thank you, Prof. One Omar has a question. How would you advise Muslim countries nowadays on the path of Wasatiyyah? Are many Muslim countries already on the right track of Wasatiyyah, including Malaysia or other OIC countries?
I'm sorry to say that none of the Muslim countries are on the right track of Wasatiyyah. They are on the right track of corruption and hypocrisy, and also trying to please Western powers. So I look forward to a new kind of leadership. The current leadership, I think, has to give way to the new leadership that should emerge from the Muslim world, inshallah, very soon.
Thank you very much, Prof. There's a question about what books, I think the principles that you mentioned of Wasatiyyah. So somebody wants to just get a reference to the book where you can find these principles that Shaykh Qaradhawi talked about. Which of his books?
Of course, Fiqh al-Wasatiyyah.
Okay.
Fiqh al-Wasatiyyah wal-Islamiyya, Fiqh al-Wasatiyyah al-Islamiyya wa-Tajdid. So that is the most complete work on this, on the characteristics of Wasatiyyah.
And there's one maybe almost last question. Oh, there are a few more messages. A question from Khalid Yusuf. Was Shaykh Qaradhawi Shaykh Qaradhawi advocated Sufis? Sorry, was he advocating Sufism, Salafism, or both?
No. He takes as they say, we نصلف التصوف ونسلف التصوف
نوصفه, is it?
Anyway, just we will make Sufism Salafi, and we make Salafi Sufistic. So in fact, he finds that both have good points. So he wants to bring together the good points. So this is how he leads his life. He is not known as a Sufi, but I think many of his spiritual, he is very much influenced by, what do you call it, Al-Ghazali. But he also appreciates Ibn Taymiyyah. So he's able to again get the best of all these scholars and bring them together. This is a great challenge for our education. Yeah. Okay.
Jazakallah khair, Prof. Thank you very much. It's 10:30 now. I know I mentioned to you we would maybe stop a little bit earlier, but really I believe that everybody here has been so loyal to this session. We had about 145 participants. We still have 132 with us right at the end. I'm sure everybody is, really very, very happy they stayed on. And it certainly means that we have to have you back again for a second part. I think you said you did not have time to speak on a few things. We need to give you that time in another meeting. Dr. Fathi Malkawi was with us, and he asked to send salams because he had to leave for another program, a IIIT program, and I think you can see on the screen, everybody who is around. But I think for formal purposes, we need to call it a night. Once again, Prof, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And we look forward.
Habib, terima kasih banyak.
Yeah, Habib, of course, yes. And another 130 plus all over. Malaysia, Indonesia, certainly the India, Pakistani subcontinent
have contributed a great deal by translating many of Qaradhawi's works into Indonesian. Very good.
Alhamdulillah. We have to really we have to have good competition with our colleagues from Indonesia, and also start to translate more of the works into Malay and see whether we can do better translations, inshallah. All right. So again, on behalf of the IIIT East and Southeast Asia, I'm not sure if is Prof Fauzan still around. If he's around, if he has anything to say. If not, then I take this opportunity to thank everybody. Inshallah, we will meet again in our next series, which should be in December. You'll be informed. Please keep in touch. So with that, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.